All right, well, we heard some pretty amazing things from David and Harry and Jamie about technology. And I'm going to take what they said and run even farther with it. So I'm a futurist, study the future of technology, have a small nonprofit called the Acceleration Studies Foundation, and we do conferences. And we network up. There's 18 places around the world where you can get a master's or a PhD in strategic foresight or future studies, and we network up all those folks through something called the Foresight Education and Research Network. So if you want to get education in this, check out fernweb.org. And we have these things called future salons, which are these free monthly events where people get together and talk about the future like we're doing today. So that's us, and today we're going to talk about the digital self. And the subtext here is social media. What is it going to turn into? What is your sense of self going to feel like 5 years, 3 years out from now? And it's going to be very different, I think. It's amazing. Things don't slow down. They go faster every year. And we're going to give you some evidence for that here. And I'm a believer in putting a lot of information on slides. I like words, sorry. I have to apologize ahead of time. You can read through whatever you're interested in, ignore what you're not interested in. Go ahead and grab these slides later. You can read them like a book. That's how many words there are. Accelerating.org/slides. So let's go. So what we study is a way of looking at the future called evolutionary developmental foresight. Now, we know these words from high school, evolution and development. Turns out they're actually two very different processes. Evolutionary processes are experimenting, creating variety, trying out interesting things. Developmental processes are the exact opposite. They are finding an optimum that's actually built into the physics of the system. They take chaos out of the system. Evolution throws chaos into the system. And so most of the future is unpredictable. It's evolutionary, experimental. Okay? You're going to go broke quickly trying to say, I know exactly what's going to come, as Jamie was telling us. Right? But there's a small subset of things that are predictable, and I'm going to try and give you some examples of those. One of those, of course, is the digital self. Okay? 5 words I'd like you to think about is the future is going to be more intelligent, more interdependent, more immune from disruption, more able to self-heal, self-repair, fix itself, more like a biological system. You're going to see more technological autonomy, which means these things are going to be doing more and more things that humans don't have to do or can't do. And more intimacy of the human machine and the physical digital interface. Intimacy is what the digital self's all about, isn't it? Okay? A more intimate relationship between you and technology. All right. So here's the crazy slide. This community, 40 or so of us scholars started this community in 2008 at evodevouniverse.com. We think the whole world can be looked at from this frame of evolution and development. Okay? And you can find out more about that there. As I said before, evolution is all about experimentation. Development is all about unifying things, finding an optimum that's hidden, that's waiting patiently to be discovered, okay, in the universe by us. And then natural selection is that thing in the middle, which is the mixture of evolution and development. All right. There's a rule of thumb we should think about here whenever we're looking at the future, and that's what I call the 95-5 rule. 95% of the time, the events in the future, they're bottom-up, they're local, and they're evolutionary. You can't predict them. Okay? Evolution isn't predictable. It's all about what we call the left hand of change. It's constantly creating new variety. Development's the other side. It's the right hand of change, everything leading to Rome. Right? You can predict a whole bunch of interesting things, okay? Because there's a physics, there's a constant physics, right? I can tell you the future motion of the planets. I can tell you that change is going to go faster every year. I can tell you Moore's law is going to keep going as far out as we can see, which is at least 20 years into the future. I can tell you a whole bunch of predictable things, and then there's a bunch of all the specifics that we can't predict, right? So what this means is that most technology products and services, almost all of them, are evolutionary experiments. A special few are destined to become the next big thing. The digital self is one of those next big things. Right? So, Acceleration Studies Foundation. Where does this acceleration come from? If you want the crazy physics book, that's going to give you the most interesting evidence that acceleration is built into the universe. This is the book by Eric Chason, 2001. What he basically says is that all things in the universe are energy processors. And the more complex they get, the faster and more efficiently they process energy. They flow that energy through them. So look at plants, which came out onto the Earth almost 1 billion years ago. They process energy at 900 ergs per second per gram. Humans process energy 100,000 times faster. What processes energy 1 million times faster than humans? Well, there it is. Your Pentium chip, okay? So what Chason is saying here is not that computers are more complex than us, it's just that they're learning, they're changing, they're improving themselves 1 million times faster than us per unit time. And that's really interesting, because that means what they do and how we relate to them is really important, isn't it? How we craft them, okay, into our digital self. Another person who's discovered this is Angus Madison when he talks about the rate of GDP growth. You know, you see these rises and falls of GDP, and we think, okay, this is really terrible, but you look at it on a 1,000-year scale, and this is what it looks like. It's a hockey stick, just like the other one. Okay? And the knee of the curve is 1850, the Industrial Revolution. Then there was another huge acceleration in the information revolution just 50 years ago, right? And as Ray Kurzweil and others have shown, computers are doing the same thing, right? Harry talked about Moore, and Jamie talked about Moore's law. And data, the data that computers are producing, is actually exploding even faster than the processing and storage power of the computers. Okay? So it's doubling at a rate of every 14 months, whereas processing and storage are doubling every 18 to 24 months. That means all of our machines are processing, are creating all this data, replicating it, experimenting with it, and they can't even store it all. Right? It's fascinating, but that's what's happening. So put this all together and you say, well, John, everything is on an S-curve. Everything eventually stops. That's true. What this J-curve is a whole bunch of stacked S-curves. Okay? And that's why things don't slow down. There's always something popping out that processes this stuff at a more efficient level than the previous system did. All right? All right, now we get to the technology issues that are really important to you guys, looking at your careers and the bets you're going to make over the next few years. Right? There's a hype cycle for all of this stuff. You may have heard of Gartner's hype cycle. It's a beautiful concept. What this basically says is that we see the future. We see this next big thing is going to come. We see virtual reality in 1980, and we say, oh, it's going to be so important. And we hype the crap out of it. And then, as you can see, we reach a peak of inflated expectations, and then we crash into the trough of disillusionment. And then finally, when we get to the bottom of that, the first really useful VR things come out for these little niche markets, and then people actually start making some money on them. Right? Okay. So what this basically tells you is that 95% of the time you want to be a second mover, what's called a fast follower. You want to use other people's innovation to get to the future. Let them experiment and watch and see that hype cycle, and right when it hits the bottom, like social virtual worlds right now, 2009, did it just turn it around? Oh, that's the time to buy. That's the time to get in. Okay? And then 5% of the time, that strategy isn't what you want. 5% of the time, something's coming along that if you get to that future first, that's a developmental optimum. The first Amazon, the first eBay, the first PageRank algorithm and Beowulf cluster behind Google, the first Facebook that is able to scale, you get there correctly, well, you're going to get what's called lock-in. Okay? And so that's the huge question you guys have to decide for this technologies, products and services you're developing, the career choices that you're making, the startups you're going into. Where do I want to be a fast follower? Where do I want to be a first mover? Right? And most of the time, you want to be a fast follower. Watch other people do the experiments. So the context of this is here we are in Web 2.0. And we're moving up the web to video and to the semantic web. And the digital self is all about Web 3.0 and 4.0, the video and the semantic web. The digital self is a world where your machines actually start to understand what you're saying to them. Okay, now, Jamie was talking, and Harry, I think both were talking about the Google Nexus 1. This machine has semantic understanding of you. So it's actually slightly into Web 4.0. Okay? They index 3 trillion unique tokens, which are word combinations. They put those on the web. Statistical natural language processing map. And they do the voice recognition processing on the server as well. So they have an NLP map that grows with intelligence
every day because we're constantly putting more information into that map, because we're using email, we're using the web, right? And the voice recognition processing system. That thing is so good. If you have a Nexus One and you say, Vietnamese restaurants near me, just about anything you ask it, the system understands. It was confused by Australian English for 3 months when it came out in January. Remember that? Okay, or just November. By January, it was no longer confused by the Australian English. That's how well these things work. They're unreasonably effective, right? Now, the interesting thing is we're going to be wearing all these technologies, okay, pervasively on us. But the really interesting thing is the average question that you and I are asking the Oracle, which right now is Google, right? Hopefully it'll be Bing, a good second choice soon. The average question that we're asking the Oracle doubles in length every 7 years. So we're on this exponential part of the curve right here before the inflection point. So I wrote this article in 2003, the conversational interface, and I said, if you Google conversational interface and then hit I'm feeling lucky, my article is still the #1 article. Okay? A lot of people link to it and they say, hey, this is an interesting concept, John. I think you're probably right. I think that between 2012 and 2019, we're going to go the average question that we're going to ask the Oracle through our cell phones, through our kitchens, through our car interfaces, through our laptops when we're trying to use a complex software. The average length of the question is going to go from 5.2 to 10.4 words. That's huge. That is an inflection point. That is a world where emergent grammars come in. That is a world that we call the conversational interface turning into the digital self or the cybertwin. All right? So how do you know you're going to want to have a face when you're talking to Google after 2012? How do you know you're going to want to have a face on that thing? What's it going to be able to give you if you have a face while you're talking to it? What kind of information? Nonverbal communication, just like you and I use when we're talking to each other. It'll go like this if it understands. It'll go like this if it doesn't, right? It'll smile if it needs to wake you up. If it tells, listening to you that you're a little bit down, right, or you're distracted. It's more efficient to have verbal and nonverbal going on in parallel. What have I just sold you on? I sold you on the idea that your computer is going to have a face between 2012 and 2015. That's really weird. That means when you're busy, I'm going to be able to talk to your cybertwin. I'm going to have to answer a few questions to make sure I'm not a telemarketer. When you're asleep, your cybertwin is going to be out spidering the web, doing interesting things, parsing all of this semi-semantic data for you. This beautiful real-time web article that Dave Sparks just did. You should read this article. We're indexing Twitter. We're indexing all of Facebook status updates. Real-time stuff. We're going to be able to search it, rank it, have algorithms for pattern matching, all of it. And it's all going to work because the NLP is there. That's the point. Okay? It's there now. It's unbelievable. If you don't believe me, go look at this little Milo YouTube video. It's 5 minutes, Milo. Okay? Xbox Natal coming out December of this year. As was just mentioned, their box is probably going to ship at the end of the year, and this is going to be one of the fundamental games for it, called Milo and Kate. There's a little $80 sensor that sits on the top of your screen there, along with your Xbox 360. Right? This woman talks to this boy using natural language. The boy understands her because it's game-specific information. The boy responds to her emotions and changes his face based on that. This is a true conversational interface for kids for the video game world coming out Christmas. Okay, and if it doesn't snap your head, it snaps mine, all right? Now, imagine when they use an open conversational interface that's server-based, like Google's is for this kind of a thing. This is how you're going to talk to your computers. Maybe not all the time, as Harry was mentioning. A lot of time you're going to want to type. You're going to want to do things privately. But the important point is all of the things you've ever said to the web, it's going to be able to index that information and have an NLP understanding of it. That's why the conversational interface is so important for taking us to the symbiotic age, an age where we feel naked without our computer clothes. Okay? An age where you feel, imagine a world where you have 150 kids, and they're all kind of completing each other's sentences, working together, watching each other's feeds, permissions into each other's social webs and live streams. 150 kids that have a little reputation and collaboration system built on top of that are going to outperform kids that are disconnected, as long as all those kids are cognitively diverse. The person who proved that is Scott Page. He wrote the book in 2008, The Difference, how cognitive diversity creates better groups, firms, and societies. Whenever you have 150 friends who are part of your lifeline, remember, millionaire, right? You're now so freaking smart, you have to turn that off if you're going to a job interview, or if you're taking a test, or if you're in any situation where you're being kind of performance ranked. Because the kids who have that, those kids are going to totally outcompete kids who are disconnected. That's a weird future, isn't it? That's a future where you're going to a kid of 15, 2018, let's say, is going to remember something, and they're not going to remember whether it happened off someone else's video blog to them, or if it actually happened to themselves. Because to them, it's the same thing, you see? It's all streaming into their live stream, right? So your digital self is now a symbiont. This is a world we call the value cosm, where you have your values are now kind of publicly expressed, privately and publicly, and you can start surfing that information. And it gets weird. It gets weird when you die. Okay, it gets weird when you die. Okay? Because are you going to turn off your cyber twin? Are you going to let your cyber twin continue to get smarter by interviewing all your friends? When your cyber mom dies, you're not going to go to a tombstone to grieve. You're going to fire up digital mom. Right? You will. You can get all of her stories, her attitudes. You see how that changes a lot of stuff? It's really fascinating. Okay? There's a whole bunch of challenges to this, particularly early: data security, privacy, predictive marketing and profiling, better manipulation through powerful corporations of overconsumption, all that stuff. How early can kids have cyber twins? We haven't even begun to ask that question. Are you going to let your cyber twin complete your sentences when you're having a senior moment? Some people are, because you know what? That's how predictable you and I are. Once I've life logged all the things that I've spoken the last couple of years, the things I care about come up over and over again. It's going to whisper that word in my ear. And I'm going to either let it happen or I'm not. Is that an intimacy of digital and individual self that you're not comfortable with? Well, you shouldn't be, because we haven't actually thought through these issues. We're going to get there, aren't we? But there's a lot of interesting opportunities, too. Imagine a world where you're reaching for a can of tuna on the shelf, and your cyber twin says, your digital self says, you don't want that one, you want this one right here. It gives you a little green arrow on your AR glasses, or just, a little cue of some type. And you reach over, and just spending two seconds, reaching over to grab that other can of tuna, you send a nasty, an irate email. You're a complainer email. You're a super user now. You send the complainer email to the other Bumblebee or whoever. So you guys are still killing the dolphins. You get too much mercury in your tuna. I'm not going to buy your crap until you do XYZ thing. But you know what? You didn't even tell them that. Your cyber twin did that. Why did it do it? Because it knows what you read. It knows what you care about. It's got a crude map of your values. This thing isn't even the AI yet. This is just natural language processing. Collaborative filtering, which is what Amazon does now, or Netflix. Is that freaky? So there's a lot of potential power here for expressing your values and protecting them. So there's upsides as well as downsides. So think about all the things you might want to improve and ask yourself, how is the digital self going to impact those? Video management, we have Boxy, which was discussed as one really interesting new technology, right, by David, okay? That's forked off of the Xbox Media Center. We're going to have access to the internet. We've got talent management, all these really interesting things happening in the talent management space, in terms of outsourcing, in terms of games. Collective foresight, there's these prediction markets now. Remember Hollywood Stock Exchange, which is a prediction market for betting on the futures of movies? In April, they're going to have a real-life futures market for that. So you can make money if you think that Avatar is going to go big. Okay? We're going to have prediction markets for everything. Real money prediction markets. Moving in that direction. And if you have a digital self managing all these things, steering the ones that you care about the most to you, imagine how much more collective intelligence can be captured. It's a very different, interesting world. So I'm going to leave you with the last one, which is, let's do some prediction ourselves about a developmental future. A tablet. This thing here. The top of this thing. Tablet PC. What is the ideal thing that a developmental future you're going to use that for?
I suggest there's 4. A remote for your internet television. This is a tremendously valuable thing. Look at this picture right here of this guy doing this, right? Now you have all of these different channels, and you're basically aggregating your favorite ones to the top, right? You got all this specific information flowing up on them. You can use it for secondary viewing. You can use it for chat with others who are watching the movie at the same time with you socially, like people play Xbox Live live games today. Okay, a whole social layer added on top of your internet, right? An e-reader, a video viewer, and a notepad or clipboard. What did Apple iPad launch with? They launched with an e-reader and a video viewer, right? The biggest one they missed, didn't they? Rescuing Apple TV, which you can currently use. You can use your iPhone to use Apple TV and watch YouTube videos. If they'd made that pad into that, I would have bought one of these things, right? I would have bought an Apple TV to go with it, because that's the future, man. Those remotes are going away. That thing is so much more useful. Can't lose it either. It's big, right? So think about these things and say, well, what things can we actually predict? They have to occur. Who's going to make that? Well, Lenovo's got the IdeaPad coming out in June. That's basically an iPad that pops off the top, so now you can use it as an ebook reader or a video TV remote, or you can plug it back in, and now you can use it like a laptop. So that's a much better model, isn't it? But the most important thing is nobody's created the conversational interface for your television. Well, look at the Nexus 1 right there. Google could get it done, right? Let's hope they do. Let's hope somebody does this soon. Okay, and if you're really interested in internet television, go out and get one of those boxy boxes when it comes out in a couple of months, the D-Link boxy box, because that is a fascinating new space that's going to really explode and have a lot of interesting new benefits for us. So, thanks.